Okay, hello, Marcus Alexander Stiglegger. Last time we talked, it was in Berlin, but now we are in our respectively different spaces. And we were talking about a chapter you wrote for a German book. Please tell my audience what the thrust of your argument is on evil in Hollywood genre cinema. Yeah, there it is.
The thing is, this used to be a conference on the fascination of evil in media, especially in films. And this was 7 or 8 years ago, and it had a background in religion studies. So the focus was not only film and media studies, but also religion and philosophy. So the whole book and the whole conference it is based on was a huge discussion, interdisciplinary, on the nature, the definition of evil, the many faces of evil. And there were a lot of different contributions dealing with films. So I had to focus on certain, to narrow my focus on the subject. And I chose some aspects of evil in Hollywood genre cinema because I was just at that time, I began working on this huge handbook of genre theory, which came out in 2020. It's in German, unfortunately. So I had this focus already on genre cinema and was asking myself, how does evil appear in genre films? Which genres are interesting to deal with here? Because it's not only horror films or thrillers, it's also melodrama, and probably a lot of westerns, war films. And so it's really hard. That's the first insight. It's really hard to define what actually is evil in the context of genre cinema. It varies and it changes depending on which examples you deal with and which genres you deal with. And even within the genres, there's a transformation going on. For example, in Western cinema, for many people today, it began with the Great Train Robbery, which has gangsters, which can be defined as evil in the perspective of society, which is robbed and killed probably, and the state forces the police hunting the gangsters. But at the time, the film in 1902, it referred back to an historical robbery. So it was not a Western, but it was more kind of a gangster film at that time. And the iconography we now call the Western was not that established in this context. So the Western cinema developed during the 10s and 20s, and we have this huge flourishing of Western serials in the 20s and 30s and so on. There we have very schematic ideas of what is good and what is evil. So we have the pioneers and the farmers who have to be protected, and we have the wild beings like the American Indians, how they were called back then, and Native Americans now, of course. So this began with a very different idea of what it became later. For example, in the 50s, when people like Robert Aldrich shot films with an Indian protagonist, then still played by a white actor, Burt Lancaster in Marseille. I think, what's the original title? The problem is often the German titles differ hugely there.
Right.
So he plays an Apache, an uprising Apache there. And it's a kind of red-facing, if you like, seen from today. But it was the attempt to give the Native Americans a voice in genre, in Western films. And this changed again during the hippie era and the Vietnam era, New Hollywood. We have a lot of different concepts of what evil in Western is like. For example, Billy Jack was the half Indian hero protecting the reservation against the evil white man. So it completely changed around from John Ford's Western, where white gunslingers were able to kill the natives without any consequences. And it turns around to have Indian heroes like Billy Jack protecting the reservations. So this is one example of how a very popular genre back then developed the idea of what could be called evil then.
Beautiful. So you touched a little bit on in your answer with that, but tell people more about a term you used in the essay, the meta genre.
Okay, the meta genre is the idea. The question is, how can we talk about genre in the sense of film studies to keep it focused? Because every film viewer has an own idea of what a certain film genre looks like. And there are conventions, and we can agree on some elements, like if people wear hats and riding horses and shoot, it could be a Western. But it could be something else. For example, a film like The Untouchables by Brian De Palma has a Western sequence within the context of gangster film and so on. So we have the idea of genre transformation, hybridity, and so on. But you ask about meta genres. The idea is that we have certain families of genres which can be combined under the helm of a bigger concept, if you like. For example, the fantastic film is a meta genre, and horror film, science fiction, and fantasy film are genres, and then we have a subgenres. And if you like, there's the meta genre is on the top, and then we have the genres, the conventional genres, and then we have the subgenres. And this is kind of an inverted tree, or a kind of a root work, which results from that. And it can be combined then. So we have meta, genre, subgenre, and combinations, hybridities, like the fusion of several genres to something new. For example, if you ask younger audiences what an adventure film looks like, they say probably Tomb Raider or Indiana Jones. But these two are hybrids between adventure and fantasy film already. So they are also part of the fantastic meta genre. So that's the idea of this systematic order of the genres.
Okay, cool. And I'm glad you mentioned Indiana Jones. It's a good transition to my next question. Tell me how the image of the exotic foreigner has been used in Hollywood genre cinema over the years.
The exotic foreigner.
Yeah.
It's very interesting that, and we come back to the evil now, that especially the Steven Spielberg entertainment films. So I would differ between Steven Spielberg's ideas of serious cinema, like The Color Purple, Schindler's List, and so on, and films like his entertainment films. And Indiana Jones is totally referring to the serials of the 30s. So it is an entertainment concept, also combinations to comic and so on. The main evil in Indiana Jones are Nazis. So we have this ultimate political and ideological evil, which is then combined to a kind of negative religion in the first film, Raiders of the Lost Ark, where the Nazis try to abuse the Ark as a kind of new secret weapon. And then they are attacked by the Ark, by the power of the Ark, and they melt down. So it's very metaphorical in that sense. The Nazis as a metaphor of evil in this sense are very easygoing, because everybody can agree they are evil because they act evil. What they do is trying to conquer foreign countries, to make people submit to them, and to overtake their ideology and so on. So they are racist and everything else, and they commit genocide. You can't get more evil. You can see in the fourth film there is the communist threat as well. And both the Nazis and the communist threat are classical after Second World War threats seen as the evil trying to invade America. So during the Reagan era, for example, you have a film like The Red Dawn by John Milius, which is kind of a very interesting coming of age neo-Western at the same time, but is also a film about the war of the communists against the United States. So, and they are trying to to brainwash the people with films by Eisenstein, which is really like, I think it's a really funny idea that John Milius came up with, and so on. So what you're asking is, there is the cultural foreigner, which can be defined as belonging to the realm of evil, but then it has to be combined with a certain imagery or certain uniforms, certain ideology, a certain religion, and so on. And so it's not just the foreign, it's also the ideological threat combined with it, and a certain iconology. That would be my idea.
Okay, now let's talk about being seduced by evil and what that entails, but just in the movies, okay?
The seductive power is something I see deep within a film as a strategy. Film is a medium of seduction. That's my perspective. I developed the seduction theory of film as my second book in academic contexts. And I see the strategies of seduction dealing with an experience of ambivalence. So what films do is they try to bring us in situations that challenge us, that force decisions. We have to side with certain people, and we have to decide against others, and we can decide, oh, now it makes sense to go the path of violence, for example, something which we would never do in reality probably, but we decide to do that in the film symbolically, and so on. And so the seductive power of certain concepts is stronger than of others, and evil has a certain appeal because, first of all, evil depends on the perspective. If something is considered evil, it's because you have a certain perspective that makes it evil. For example, it's not by chance that Darth Vader is a character which can be total evil and become the protagonist without the mask then in his youth for another film. And then we identify with him to a certain part, and then we see how he goes the wrong path probably. But at the same time, see how many people do a cosplay, Star Wars cosplay, and they want to become stormtroopers and Darth Vader and so on. So there is a huge seductive power that lies within this idea of the sovereign who lives by its own code. So this can also be kind of heroism. You can say the Gothic villain, the dark evil force, and Darth Vader is probably the most obvious of that, is also a kind of dark hero, and he lives by his own code, and you can admire him for that, even if he does evil things. But it depends on the perspective.
Definitely. So who are you? Darth Vader is an obvious one, but tell me who are some of your personal favorite evil seducers in cinema.
Right, that's interesting. For me, I've been dealing with film, I think, beginning when I was 11 or 12. Then I began reading about films, and I was really obsessed by films I was not able to see back then because I was too young. And probably you know the same. I saw the trailer of Conan the Barbarian, for example, and I really adored that. I saw Mad Max, The Road Warrior. And I desperately wanted to see that film, and it had been an influence since I was like 12 or 13, even if I saw it with 14, I guess, for the first time and endless times again. But at the same time, I was aware that that this medium has this ambivalence. That's ambivalent quality. And even if you say Mad Max, for example, is a positive, a hero, he is so nihilistic and so negative in his attitude, and that you would say he's a kind of anti-hero in essence. And I think even more so in Fury Road, the fourth film. He has not even a real voice, that he has no psychology in this sense, and so on.
True.
So there has to be, if the hero is an anti-hero, the evil has to be even much worse than in other cases. So, but that's not the point. Later I realized there are this ambivalence can be brought much further. And for the first time when I saw Hannibal Lecter embodied in the film Manhunter by Michael Mann, which was much earlier than The Silence of the Lambs, for example, because this film is 85, I guess, 86.
Yeah, something like that, 86, I think.
86, yeah. So this idea of this serial killer being hyper intelligent, hyper educated, and in advance of everything, and can do anything, which is sovereignty. He lives by his own code and doesn't even care for human beings. So he's above them. He's a kind of superhuman being. So it's a kind of a simple idea.
Is he an Übermensch?
Yeah, the Nietzschean Übermensch idea, but very condensed in a very simple concept in a way, but probably a misunderstood concept. But anyway, it works that way. And it becomes more obvious when Hannibal Lecter is embodied by Anthony Hopkins, because he's even more cultured as a person. And we have the serious Hannibal, where he's embodied by Mads Mikkelsen. He has this European idea combined with it again, and then he's a highly aesthetic guy who has this fetish with cooking and preparing very special meals. And so it's the idea of the aesthetical way of living above everything else. This is probably a very clever concept of the fascinating evil, because he is evil, obviously. He lives outside any rules of society, and that makes him evil. So evil is living outside the rules of society and even breaking them to a point which is totally inhuman, because he mutilates and kills people, obviously, and even if they have deserved it. So
I love the scene where he eats Ray Liotta's brains in Hannibal. That was pretty funny.
Oh yeah, in the film Hannibal. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But this is the point where evil becomes a kind of a cartoonish evil. Because I think Ridley Scott is the one director who didn't really take the concept that seriously.
Right.
Yeah, you would agree. Okay.
Yeah.
Because the other films are really desperate in taking it seriously. Even a film like Hannibal Rising is so like, oh, that's his psychology, that's his childhood, and we have to know that. No, we don't really have to know that, because the point is that he just lives by that, by his own laws and codes. So. But there's another one. I would like to add another one, which is Colonel Kurtz. I
was going to get to that.
By Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. Because this comes from, obviously, it comes from this novel by Joseph Conrad, Heart of Darkness, which by the title is about a journey into the heart of darkness. And the heart of darkness can be evil. So the thing is that the film is an interpretation and is a much wider concept based on that novel. And this is due to the author, John Milius. And saying that, I mentioned him several times now, I realized. John Milius is close to Hollywood Evil, probably, because he is the self-confessed ultra right-wing Hollywood guy. Who is, he's Jewish, but he is obsessed with weapons. He is obsessed with kind of this idea of the America before the Civil War, probably. And so he is kind of a Western guy. This is kind of funny when you see it as a kind of a comic figure living in Hollywood. But when you realize that his family is involved with the Trump politics at that time, his daughter worked at the White House actually. And so there is a huge connection to real right-wing, ultra right-wing politics as well, which is not that funny anymore. You probably will agree on that.
Yeah.
Okay, so saying that, John Milius is an interesting writer and filmmaker, and he always is on this edge of glorifying something which can be called evil. Because when you enter the film Apocalypse Now, you are with this guy who is basically a killer. Charlie Sheen, Martin Sheen, obviously the father. Martin Sheen plays this guy who has the mission to kill someone who is outside of the laws of military. So within a war, which is kind of not really justified at that point anymore. So, and he even leaves the country like Vietnam and goes over the border towards Cambodia, I guess. In that sense. And into the jungle. And the jungle is the metaphorical jungle, like the total wilderness and the total darkness. And it confronts him with his own darkness. And what is his own darkness? It's Colonel Kurtz. So Colonel Kurtz is a mythos. He is only talked about, and he's this highly decorated soldier and so on. But also, if you know the novel, he knows the thing is that he no, in the film he reads this book, the Hollow Man. This he reads out this, and this begins with a quote from The Heart of Darkness. Mr. Kurtz is dead. So he knows that he's already dead.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And I'm sure that someone like John Milius really is into that. That's a great idea to say this guy knows he's his own mythos and he lives beyond his own death, because he knows there's someone
beyond good and evil.
Yeah, he's beyond good and evil. Absolutely. And I think and there we go.
There we go.
Seen from our point of society, of the kind of enlightened democratic society, and I'm speaking of Canada and Europe at the moment.
Yeah, right.
This perspective would say someone beyond good and evil is still kind of evil. Because he's living not on the same level.
Not by the norms, at least.
Right.
He's sort of reinterpreting it, and maybe it makes sense, but it's like a bigger picture, and that a lot of us aren't going to be privy to, and it'll just look crazy. That's the point. Absolutely. And also, sorry, just it kind of reminds me of Colonel Kurtz, another Nietzsche quote: be careful to take on monsters that you don't become a monster yourself. Yeah, and staring into the abyss. Obviously. Yeah, staring in the abyss. Yeah. The abyss looks back into you. All these Nietzschean things. I mean, Conan the Barbarian is started with a Nietzsche quote as well. So I think this is all John Milius. If you read the script is available. If you read the script by John Milius, this film is really bordering on the edge of glorifying evil, mythical evil. And Colonel Kurtz has invoked a kind of mythical age, if you can say that, because the age of mythos is, as mythos is going in cycles, it combines all ages. And if you see how he lives, like with this sacrificial places and the ruined temple area and the soldiers being naked but wearing the guns, and so everything is combined here. He lives the mythos, and he knows that there's the myth of killing the king and replacing the king. So the king is dead, long live the king, which is also obvious because he reads the book From Ritual to Romance, which is also lying beside his bed. And From Ritual to Romance is about the death of the king. And he reads the James Fraser, The Golden Bough, which is also starting off
with killing the king. So he knows that he has to be killed to live forever. And Marlowe is coming to kill him. And in the logic of the John Milius script, Marlowe replaces him as the God King. But in the logic of the film by Coppola, which has two endings, as we know, at least two endings, different versions. In the long version, it is clear that that he just leaves. And the logic would be that he stays there. And the first version, I think, is the burning compound. So in the end, so you see just the ruins on fire. The most logical thing would be that he replaces Kurtz in that logic, but it is not like that. Thus, the John Milius was obsessed by the idea, doing it over and over again, and he made Farewell to the King, the film playing in Borneo, and he made Conan the Barbarian, where the God King is killed and then replaced by the self-crowned King Conan, which is also not that played out in all versions. I think there's two endings of the film as well.
Okay. All right. Now, I don't know what you're going to say to this. Maybe you'll have a good answer. Maybe you won't. Which popular character is ultimately more seductive within his ideology? Darth Vader in the original OG trilogy, or Heath Ledger as the Joker in The Dark Knight? Who's more seductive?
I think that this depends. For me personal, I think Joker is more seductive because he is this anarchic figure, not anarchistic in that way, because anarchism is kind of left-wing ideology of living without a head of state, and the anarch is something like Hannibal Lecter would be, someone who lives outside of all systems, of every rule, outside of every set of rules. So I think Heath Ledger as the Joker is kind of a very radical idea of like, fuck all rules. I do what I just see the world burn then. And Darth Vader is a proto-fascistic anti-hero kind of phenomenon. And I think you can admire Darth Vader only when you are really into a kind of this idea of order, of ultimate order. And I think there's a lot of people who are really like, oh, there has to be this huge rain to wash away all the shit, and then it will work. And these are the guys dressing up in stormtrooper gear to wash away the scum and stuff. So I wouldn't like say these people are like ideologically problematic, every one of them, but I think you have to have this idea to admire what Darth Vader represents, at least a little bit.
Okay, good stuff.
Would you agree to
that? Yeah, I mean, he's cool. He's cool.
For sure.
I think like, and it's sort of expanded in the prequels, you know, why he does what he does. Yeah. You know, for love, and he was manipulated, and what are you gonna do? He's he's an emo boy.
That's true, yeah.
He's very emo. Darth Maul's like a cool ninja. He kind of comes in for 10 minutes, doesn't say anything, does some slicing, gets sliced. There's not much going on there. Remember how hyped he was, how much he was promoted, you know, going into that movie, and then he says like one thing.
That's true. Yeah, that's daring in a way.
Yeah.
But I think that's like Boba Fett worked in Empire Strikes Back, like this very mysterious, kind of threatening figure in the background that has its moment then. And I'm not sure if all the psychology really works and does well to these characters. For me, Darth Vader in the original trilogy was a kind of mysterious. He has this ambivalence. He has this moment of emotion. I'm your father, and so on.
Yeah.
But it's still a mystery. And I'm really into films which don't give up all their mysteries. Films have to keep their mysteries to a certain point. For example, yesterday I saw, for a second time, I saw The Northman. And The
Nice.
Northman is a film which is, for the second time, I found it even better, is really great because it says what I said, the perspective matters. For the main character, the mother is a goddess, and the guy who killed his father is absolute evil. But it could be another film where the main hero is the total threat. Yeah, where he is evil actually because he's a threat to the community, which was newly built after replacing the old king. And they are just farmers. They are farmers living on the edge of this volcano. And then he comes and kills them off all the time. And even sacrifices himself to do that, which is so, it's really ambivalent. The film makes you overtake the logic of mythical thinking in a way very rarely films did before.
Okay. Okay, well, I got to wrap it up. Marcus, thanks a lot for your time today. I really enjoyed the topic. It's always fun to talk about some of these characters. We talked about Kurtz, we talked about Vader, we talked about Lecter. We threw in a little Nietzsche in there. It was fun. So
Yeah,
what do you have coming up next?
I'm actually writing a second book on the seduction theory of film, dealing with a lot of new films. Because cool. I realized the first book was in 2005, Ritual and Seduction was the title. And I'm also planning to publish something in English, like one key chapter from it as well, because I think it might be valuable also to have this in English. And I have good experiences over the years now with people who actually dare to deal with it. And then they say, yeah, it really works because film is seduction, and that's a key concept. And it's funny because not many people deal with this this idea to approach film. And I do it as long as it's possible because especially in Germany, film becomes much more unimportant over the last years. And people are talking social media, they're talking games and some series, but that's it. Film as kind of a film and cinema is not really something that is taken too seriously at the moment, which is kind of annoying to me.
I agree.
And, I try to work against this tendency in a way in academic and in writing books and doing bonus material for releases. And I just did this. Oh, that might be interesting. I have this, The Man Who Laughed. That's a special edition in Germany.
Nice.
A classic film. I did a documentary for that, like how this is connected to the Universal monsters, for example. And I did Witchcraft Through the Ages, which is a special edition. It's out in America, I know, but there's a German version. And I also did work on an alternative soundtrack, which will be published with a German edition on CD then, and so on.
Okay, cool. Well, we'll stay tuned in.
Yeah, let's stay in contact, and glad to meet you again.
Absolutely. Thanks for your time.